I had been with the department maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And when I read the intake, I was just like, man, I wanted to like get out of my chair and go look for these kids immediately.
They were found in a meth house where they were born, and this house was a known house to have previously shot at police officers.
There were drugs just laying around. You would have no sign of a child or an infant, let alone being in that home. Not a blanket, not a car seat, not a stroller. And for twins, you would need double the amount of those things. And there was nothing. They were extremely young. They were less than a week old. The mother had had these children at a residence. These children had not received any medical attention.
The pictures that we saw, Scarlett's eyes it looked like she had literal golf balls in her eyeballs, and they were closed. Jade's were slits. They were so crusted. They both were born with gonorrhea, chlamydia, staph, and flu in their eyes.
I could tell that they needed medical attention by the way that they looked. Mom looked like she needed some medical attention herself as well. She refused to go, but the girls did go by ambulance to the hospital.
We got to go up to the hospital and see them a few times. You just know, okay, for however long this is going to be, we're going to take care of them and do what we need to do.
Every kid gets a CASA in Montgomery County, and since this was a set of twins, they ended up each getting their own CASA, which works out great for them and advocates them to stay together. Obviously, it's a goal to keep children together and siblings together.
The babies were born at home, so they had no birth certificate. We didn't know their birth date. We had the mom's guesstimate at when they were born, so we weren't sure exactly how old they were or what kind of condition they were going to be in when we did see them.
Mom was in a situation where she really wasn't able to take care of the children. And then we were trying to figure out who the dad was.
We found out that Mom was incarcerated. And so we had to go up to the jail. And we were asking her, do you know someone who might be a family member or whom you might want these girls to go with? And she started naming off names. Well, Susan and I are grabbing things out of our purse to try to find something that we can write down on. And while Susan's talking to her, I'm taking notes of names. Well, Mom doesn't have phone numbers. So we have a list of 15, 20 names of different friends that she might want us to call. CASA has a Seneca that was able to help us find names and phone numbers.
Denise took it upon herself to really dig deep and look for family. We decided that we would pursue the family thing, and Denise took on the yeoman's job of calling people. To me, that's the hard thing, and Denise is so good at it.
I call him up and I'm telling him, a little bit about it. Just very small amount, because you've got to tell him something.
I was hesitant at first because I was nervous because we didn't have kids. And they were talking about taking 2 kids.
I said no completely because he was out of state and I was a full-time student, didn't even entertain the idea. And I was at clinical for school during this phone call, and I couldn't get it off my mind. I called him back and I was like, okay, well, we just need to really, really talk about it and think about it.
That's when Travis called me back up and he said, well, we've been talking about it, and I think, would it be all right if we met the girls? And I said, absolutely. So I got with Susan and we called CPS and we arranged for a visit.
The second that my sister and I walked in, I could hear the twins, who are at this time 6 months old, playing in the room with the CPS worker and the current foster family. I dropped to my knees there and cried, and I knew at that moment, all right, well, I don't really care about how hard it's gonna be or how much work I'm gonna have to do. I can't live my life without them. I hadn't even seen them, just heard them. And I just knew it was what I needed to do in life.
It was love at first sight, I think.
Rachel was smitten.
Yes.
How could you not be? The girls are absolutely precious.
And this is where I was sold. They FaceTimed me, and as soon as I seen those kids, it was done. I was crying. I was bawling on the phone. I had every emotion running through me. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It was a feeling I'll never forget. Just seeing these children that didn't have anything, and I wanted to give them everything.
The previous foster family who got them from the moment that they were taken up until we met them and started the placement process, they're the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life.
We had a mediation scheduled, and that's where all parties come together and talk about what the next step is and where the finalization could happen. And this is where we meet Dad.
After looking at his criminal record, we knew that that was not good.
We did not feel like he was anywhere near the best interest of these girls at all.
Right.
So because of mediation not working, then we knew we had to go to trial.
The stuff that went through to save them was incredible.
Yeah, because we had to fight for them ourselves. We had to stand up in court because the biological father, he was fighting for them as well.
He was also a convicted felon who had charges of aggravated sexual assault of a 13-year-old.
It was a long trial. A lot of things came out. It was tense. They bring Mom in. She still was being incarcerated, and so she was escorted into the courtroom. So all parties were there, and the whole story was told in court. The trial ended, and the judge made a decision, and she ruled that he would not have any rights to these children. One other thing with Mom being there, Mom did relinquish her rights.
I know that I feel real strongly that when you're in a position that you cannot take care of children, that relinquishing is hard, but it's the most unselfish thing you can do, and it's the most explicit way you can show unconditional love for your children. And I believe that that's what Mom did.
Well, unfortunately, Dad decides that he wants to appeal this decision. Well, it was a long process.
When the appellate court said no, that he agreed with Judge Tucker's finding, rights were terminated. Then COVID hits, and then CASA is still on the case until those baby girls are adopted. At this point, they're not babies, they're 2.5 years old.
If it wasn't for Susan and Denise, I don't know if we could have gotten the girls, because there was so much miscommunication, and they fought tooth and nail and looked up so many different scenarios and different guidelines, and they were our support system, honestly.
Well, I think that CASA, particularly in Montgomery County, because I have worked in other counties, it's just invaluable that there's an advocate for every case. It's just a miracle, really.
Every child in Montgomery County gets a CASA. It's not like that everywhere. That's a blessing for us. They're the voice of the children.
They truly are an advocate for the children. CASA helps that child, and they have that child in mind.
And they love our girls, like they truly do, and it's awesome.
Well, we decided that as our parting gift, because this case was so close to both of our hearts. So we thought, what do you think if we just put a little book together as just a commemoration of where they came from and how many people love them and the progress they've made. And they're still very close to both of us in our hearts. Yeah.
Girls have just blessed us more than we've blessed them.
Say cheese.
Say big cheeses.